What's up, gente? What's up, Raza? Let's talk about the 1970, August 29th, 1970 Chicano Moratorium. Because this is a piece of history that a lot of people do celebrate. A lot of people will be, commemorating and gathering for sometime next week. I believe this Saturday, but other people may do it on Fridays and, different days. But let's talk about this day, the 1970 Chicano Moratorium that took place on August 29th in 1970. And let me start out with the definition of a moratorium. Moratorium is where you call for a halt, you call for a pause, you call for people to come together and reconsider something or stop something. And that's what the moratorium where Raza Chicanos and Chicanas got together, Raza Mexicana. Matter of fact, they were Puerto Ricans and they were actually Cubans, key people involved with that, right? With the movement and making sure that people could get together. It drew 30,000 people. And the number one thing that was on their mind was the Vietnam War. So it actually was a moratorium to stop and end the Vietnam War, to bring justice to those being shipped off to the Vietnam War, to bring justice to the barrios and the people who weren't getting treated equally. Police brutality was a big thing. Our schools were still falling apart back then, and we're being discriminated against, and especially in East LA, which was and continues to be the second largest school district in the country next to New York City. So in 1970 through the 60s, a lot of people just got tired of it, and this moratorium, this gathering took place. About 30,000 people showed up from throughout the nation. Now, what people don't know is that these Chicano moratoriums had already been taking place. That was not the first time they actually met to address these issues, to protest the war, the discrimination during the civil rights movement, right? They actually had met prior to that and had other moratoriums in other parks. And a lot of them took place in parks because that's where people will go. Well, this specific Chicano moratorium, I think it was the largest eventually in its time. It was one where Reyes Tijerina and others chose to come, or actually, it was not Reyes Tijerina, let me correct that. It was Corky Gonzalez and others decided to show up. A lot of people who were key to the Chicano movement, including the Brown Berets, were present. And matter of fact, sadly, a lot of people were killed that day, including some Brown Berets. The name, and by the way, I say they were killed because at this 30,000 people gathering where they were protesting the war, and they were doing it in a festive manner. People were singing, they were dancing. I think Luis Valdez was there, the creator of Zoot Suit was there, right? Many people were there. A lot of famous people were there who later became famous, but they were there and they were happily. They claimed that it was festive, and I believe them because a couple who had just got married in a church right in the neighborhood actually joined them, joined the Chicano Moratorium. It was that festive. This is beautiful because people should be coming together with love to show that love. Revolutionaries, like Chess said, they're driven by the love of their people, not the hate of their enemy. And on that day, people got together, especially to protest because their sons and daughters that they loved, especially their sons, disproportionately were being sent to a war called Vietnam. Now, during this time, a lot of people take a stand, and they eventually, when they meet at this event, somebody who had already been taking a stand, I'll mention Ruben Salazar. Ruben Salazar was a reporter for the Los Angeles Times. And if you ever see some of his stuff, his writings, interviews prior to the moratorium, he was actually speaking out. He was correcting people, and he was actually a Chicano who realized, hey, wait a minute, he had lived in Mexico and he realized the history of Mexican people north of the border who later on identified as Chicano for political reasons, spiritual reasons, every reason you can count. It was a revolutionary thing to do, but they were not being respected on a land that, arguably, some of these people were here hundreds of years before the white settlers who started shooting on them that day or who are still there today did what they did. Ruben Salazar was one of those people targeted at the Silver Dollar Hotel. I'm sorry, Silver Dollar Bar. Bar, it's not a hotel. It's been changed since. It's no longer a bar, but he was shot in there and killed, along with three other people, or two other people who had been beaten and killed by the LA Sheriff's Department, who at one point during the rally that was taking place during the day and the festivities, uh, somebody, the PD or sheriff threw a projectile, something with like a smoke bomb. It was like tear gas. Well, somebody threw it back. Like, what the hell are you doing, right? And that was actually pretty smart. We still do that right there in protest, and that's when the police came in, and the order was given to basically crack down on people, literally crack down with the batons. And you can still find this online. You can see the actual footage. A lot of videos been around for a while, and there's pictures. But when things got worse is when they started shooting at people, and that includes Ruben Salazar, who had left the park at a bar. That's why a lot of people believe he was targeted, because, like, what are you doing? You're not at the park anymore. You're shooting into this building, right? The LA sheriffs. But the rest of for law enforcement stayed at the park and went to the neighborhood, cracking heads, literally cracking heads. And I mentioned this to you all because it was a sacrifice. I was interviewed for a Netflix documentary where they asked, why is this so important? Well, this was our Selma, Alabama, during the civil rights movement for African Americans, for Black people who were fighting for the right to vote with the help of, everybody from Martin Luther King Jr. to others. They went to Selma, Alabama, and literally got beat. They were beat to that. Well, they beat, some people almost died, but beat literally like we were, and in some cases they also died. But for them, Selma, Alabama was a key turning point. For us, the Chicano Moratorium was too. Now, it's not like nothing came out of that. Actually, I was already mad, but now, years later, we do have some gains. We do have more representation, better political representation. We have police brutality that's now, you just can't hide it, especially with social media today. A lot of young people know record those cops. We have more people that came out of there, at least when it comes to degrees. And people like myself were able to go to college in the 80s and the 90s and get a degree. I even got a law degree after my master's. And I would be lying if I said I did it on my own. Anybody who says that is lying. You had the help of somebody along the way, or some groups or some people, right, to backing, especially parents who are raising kids. Well, a lot of it was due to the funding that was made available, the different programs that were available to students like myself who graduated from high school. Not, normally would we've been admitted to university, and finally here we're able to achieve that, and that was awesome. That was awesome. But a stop to the war eventually. I think it did help stop the war. I believe it was Richard Nixon who was president. And by the way, we think Donald Trump was bad. That fool is bad. But Richard Nixon was also one of those imperial presidents who felt that if the president does anything, it is not illegal. It's called the imperial presidency, where they can do whatever they like, kind of like a dictator, authoritarian, and nobody can question them, right? That was his mentality, because he promised to end the Vietnam War, but he lied, like a lot of these politicians. Instead, he escalated it, and as a result, people started protesting. So did a lot of white students across the country. And together, I think that coalition building that came out of there, that existed maybe prior to that, but not as much as it does today, was to work together against these wars. That's why the current war in Iran is an important thing to point out. As wrong, illegal, sucking up all the resources when they should be going to housing, healthcare, education. And I mention this because on August 29th, 2026, there will be a gathering in East LA, the original location of the original Chicano Moratorium was in East LA. Only it's going to be at Mariachi Plaza. That is away from was the original park, now called Ruben Salazar Park, because after him, they renamed the original park, but that's under construction. So I'm making this video in hopes that any of you who would want to go visit, check it out. There's not going to be a march this year, but they're going to gather at Mariachi Plaza, and that's in LA. You Google that, you'll get it, or you get that, and it's available to you. It's a beautiful spot. We've had a lot of protests, a lot of gatherings there. It's going to be in the afternoon as the sun's going down. Like I said, there won't be a march this year, um, but they are going to have a gathering. It will not be stopped just because the construction is taking place at the original park. And so, again, if you have a chance to go out there Saturday, August 29th, 2026, it'll be the 26th anniversary of the Chicano Moratorium, where Raza came together, and they came together with others, but to basically assert that, hey, we're human beings, and this war ended now. We're human beings. Treat us with dignity and respect, because you haven't been doing that. I encourage people to go see the movie Walk Out. And you will see the conditions, and it's sad that they couldn't even use the bathroom, especially the girls. They had to go outside. It's sad because the first thing that got you in trouble, you were not dropped out. You were pushed out of high school for things that today, it's understandable. Mental health today is a serious thing. Being sensitive to students and their needs and the cultures, it didn't exist back then. So go back and see the history books. And I mentioned the movie Walk Out because one of my mentors, Carlos Montes, is still alive. This brother's still doing a lot of work. He's actually involved in the planning of this Chicano moratorium that takes place in East LA. Like Carlos, we have other elders, including Cynthia Barajas, and they've done so much. And Cynthia, for example, if you look at her history, she has definitely done, especially with Adelitas today. Recently, it's a brown beret, all women brown beret unit. That's an incredible thing to have created, especially in these times when it's necessary in the movement, right? So Cinta Barajas, you got to give love out to her, shoot her, thank you, a heads up, and a shout out, for all the work she's done. They're going to be there. People like them are going to be there, and they're still alive. We need to cherish their memories of what they went through in the 60s and 70s, because they're still here trying to guide us. And I simply want to tell people, go out there. And if you are not in California, if you can't make it, I know we're having people from all over the country come. Maybe do your own moratorium, because that's what they used to do back in the day in Denver, Colorado, Fresno, California. I know that in the Bay Area, San Jose, I believe it is, San Jose or San Francisco, one of the Bay Area towns is going to have, or cities is going to have their own Chicano moratorium, and they've done it in the past. This is not new, but they've done it in the past. I've attended a couple of them years ago, and it's beautiful. So if you want to organize your own, just know it's the Chicano moratorium against the wars, not embracing these politicians and these wars, but rejecting the negativity, the hate, and calling for Chicana power, calling for an end to these wars, and calling for a better this world to live in under the United States of America, because it's not been pretty for us, and here we are still protesting the same things. Let's not get comfortable, gente. Let's do something in our own town if we can, and if we can't, understandable. Just stay tuned. And so, with that, I am out. Enjoy it, and I will see y'all later. Que viva la raza, all part to the people, and a ho.